that we're in.
I mean, I'll give you an example of learning these tools. Just what we do. I downloaded Claude Work. I downloaded a Descript. I downloaded a few things to see if we can optimize uploading and working on these, just our podcasts. And I'll put up the display like this is Descript. This is ChatGPT. Here's the difference. I iterated. Here's the prompt. Like I'll show I'll put it right on the screen here. You can see the variance in performance of these things, and it's not easy. Like you need to understand how to use these tools,
Yeah.
and all of them are unique in the way they display. And if you watched our last podcast, that full edit was done with the script, and then I'll link that here. You can kind of take a look at that versus this one, and we'll continue to play with that. But welcome back to another episode, Rush Hour Podcast. Big week. I'm TW's Justin. We're two tech guys that aren't technical. We're just been in this industry for a minute. Let's talk this week. We've got huge news, earnings calls, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, lots to uncover there. We've got OpenAI talking IPO. We've got Amazon doing layoffs. Maybe we don't shift up the order, but let's start. Let's start with the earnings. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah. Let's jump in. So basically, big tech announced a lot of blowout earnings, but the market still isn't convinced that AI spending makes sense. And you've seen this in some of the market behavior, especially within the Nasdaq today. But let's start with Apple first. So Apple crushed expectations. Revenue was up 16% year over year, and this was driven by a pretty staggering 23% increase in iPhone sales, fueled by iPhone 17 cycle. Yep. There you go. Apple now has 2.5 billion active devices, reinforcing why their services growth matters. And they also had a major surprise within China this year. I think China sales and revenue were up 38%. And this was driven by both upgrades and switchers. So despite these strong results on the Apple front, still seeing some supply constraints and rising memory costs. I think we've seen this across the industry, but overall, strong earnings. The market is just trying to assess what that looks like in the long. Next, we got Microsoft. Microsoft also beat earnings. They did $50 billion in quarterly cloud revenue. Yet the stock fell about 12% yesterday on fears of slowing growth and runway of AI capex. Their AI demand is so strong that it's now capacity constrained, and so this is something that the market is taking a close look at, and what resulted in some of the plunge, because basically analysts are worried that the AI revenue growth is being outpaced by their AI costs. So we'll have to check that on that and see how that goes. On to Meta. Meta delivered really strong earnings and revenue growth, but Reality Labs still had a $6 billion loss, which is keeping a lot of skepticism alive there. Looks like Zuck is still, they still have that division going. They're still investing in the metaverse, but that's been kind of a suck on the revenue. That being said, spending a ton of money on AI spending and some splashy hires, still spending billions on these hires. We'll see how that pays off. And then also scrambling to stay competitive as Google continues to pull away with their Gemini 3 model. And last but not least, we got Tesla, which is starting to move from, just a car company to something more, to being focused on robotics. They're intentionally trading these one-time vehicle sales for recurring autonomy revenue and betting on FSD subscriptions, new robotaxi miles, and transportation as a service to kind of catapult the company into a new era. So a ton of news during this period, kind of a flash on that. But anything that stood out to you relative to the different companies
I
reporting?
mean, that the Apple one kind of surprised me because the the iPhone 17 didn't feel like a big worthy of 23% of people upgrading, or 23% boost in upgrades, but I did it. I know a few other people have done it. It might have been just one of those things where other phones have just sort of worn it to a point where it was time, and lots of people decided to get new ones, not because of new features or some killer thing. It was just time to do it. And
Yeah.
felt like a good time. And I know there's been a lot of people in my offices that have gotten the 17 Pro, the orange. I don't know. I love orange. So maybe there's something there, but I think that's interesting. I didn't see that one coming. Did you?
No, I mean, a lot of these companies, they have reported strong earnings for
Yeah.
a while now.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that I'm surprised that it's strong. I guess I am surprised by how strong a bit, but I think it might just be kind of one of those cycles where, all right, everybody's just getting new phones now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about this on my LinkedIn all the time, and people probably, I get a lot of pushback, but I'm like, where's the innovation? Where are really like the strides? I know they're a second mover, but I want to see some other devices. I want to see, the impact of them, the deal that they're doing with Google to use Gemini for their models and integrate that with Siri. I want to see what kind of impact that has because Siri, our girl Siri, she ain't really doing it for me to be honest. So I want to see more of that, but it is a very like you got to give it to Tim Cook. He is probably one of the best operating CEOs of our lifetime, and it's a very profitable business. And they got tons of cash, and they're willing to wait. So they got
Yeah, I
they
mean,
got good
you know,
leadership there.
right? He did a great job at scaling the existing infrastructure and ecosystem and not taking crazy bets on new form factors and pushing new product. Like he's really grown the line, Apple line into something that is incredible. Like how much of it is him versus just incredible product? That's still questionable, but it is impressive regardless.
Yeah, I think you got to give him some credit.
You do. You do. The other one, Meta, it seems like an overall theme of is AI revenue going to match the cost? I mean, that's just an overall question. They just kind of Microsoft and Meta are going to keep having to fight that battle. The one I thought was interesting was Tesla. I've actually met someone on a business trip that got a Optimus as a beta. So they have it in
Oh,
there.
for the home, like domestic.
Yeah, they got
Interesting.
it. They got it for 6 months. Well, they were telling me that they use it every day to try it out. It's not very advanced, but they use it. They're giving feedback, and they I guess you ship it back to Tesla. He was one of 50 people that got selected, and I think his thought was it makes a lot of sense. Like little tasks, like hey, go check if all the lights are off. Go check, patrol the house when he's going to sleep. Wait by the door. Answer. I've got a Postmates coming. Go by the door and wait. Make sure all that kind of stuff. It's pretty good at. But he says directions and moving around the house. It's not really smooth, but he can see a use case for having this in
Yeah,
the house.
that's interesting. For that specifically, is it teleoperated at all for some of the commands, or is it all autonomous?
No, you give it the commands. You speak right directly to it, and it'll go and try to execute those commands.
Okay, cool. So there's no one manipulate like
Nope.
in some
The one
wow,
he has,
that's
he says it is completely autonomous. You do give it commands and it'll figure it out. And sometimes it does hallucinate. He said he's had to catch it running instead of going the front door, going off the balcony, stuff like that. But
okay.
it's in homes, right? They're getting data
Yeah.
better. Like it's farther along than I thought. Like I hadn't actually met anyone with one, which
No.
was kind of cool to hear it, that he's right there. He's like, hey, I see this thing. I'm definitely going to get one day. When
Wow.
this thing, you know, the use cases are incredible because he's like a lot of the most beneficial time from his feedback was in the morning and at night. Like you're in bed already, you're tired, and you forgot to do something. Get the robot to do it and walk away. You don't have to go stuff like, did I leave the front? Did I
Mhm.
lock the door? Did I close the sliding glass? Like, did I shut all the windows earlier? Did I turn off the whatever? It'll go and do that. And I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
That's fascinating. I can imagine a world where, they kind of talked about this with the Teslas now. We're able to kind of like when they have kind of the full robotaxi capability, you just put your robotaxi on the network and then send it off and can do all these rides and earn income. Imagine if you got that and you got Optimus,
I know. Yeah.
setting it out and you got Optimus on thumbtack and you got the other car, doing rides. Like I'm sure there could be some really interesting business models that are created out of that at scale.
I'm not, I mean, the new robo taxi is, 2 seats, no steering wheel, no gas pedal, no driving capability, just 2 seats. You literally get in there and you go for a ride. I guess that is going to be the next iteration. Uh, I'm not sure. I mean, I like driving. There's part of me that enjoys having that, but I don't know if that's just the boomer in me that's gonna like no one's gonna drive in the future. I don't know. Like, what are your
I
thoughts about driving?
Yeah, here are my thoughts on that because I've actually done some thinking about this piece specifically. I think that down the line, when you have more robotaxis, you can have more kind of like fully autonomous vehicles on the road, and car deaths are down, and it's just way safer. Driving will be a signal of affluence only. And only people will be driving when people can afford those insurance premiums because they will be so astronomically high that you will have to be rich in order to be able to drive. Like you will just not be able to afford your car
Are risk
insurance. So you'll have to be like a crazy car enthusiast who just loves
kind of
driving, is willing to spend all that money to be able to have the luxury of driving a car, or you will have very, very low, insurance costs, but you won't be able to drive it all. So I think that's the
interesting.
counterbalance. Yeah. We'll
That is
see how it plays out, but that's what I feel like
that I
is
mean
gonna happen.
that makes sense. I mean, if you just the idea of you get a robo car and you have no insurance. If you want to drive, you have lots of insurance right away. Like even if insurance rates are flat, like just flat, and now you have the option. You only need it if you drive. That is gonna feel you're gonna feel that in your pocketbook, right? Because you're gonna think
100%.
twice. Like, oh wait a minute, if I get a car that I got to drive, now I got to pay an extra couple grand every 6 months. Do I want to even do that? Is it worth that much? I like it. Do I like it
Mm-mm.
that much? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I wonder
really
how quickly that will happen, but that seems to
yeah.
be kind of like
Especially with
the
Tesla. I have Tesla
conclusion.
insurance on my Tesla, which you just do it right in the app, and my other car does not have that. So, it actually turned out to be cheaper to go through Tesla than to buy it through Mercury or Farmers or whatever. So, I
Oh,
think it's interesting. I don't know where we go with it, but it is fascinating for sure. And then the next one, which is Amazon layoffs. What have you heard there?
yeah. So, Amazon just confirmed its biggest layoffs ever, and this isn't just about a downturn; it's about how work itself is changing. So, Amazon confirmed 16,000 additional corporate layoffs a few days ago, which brings its total since October to nearly 30,000. This represents about 1.58 million, uh, you know, Tesla Amazon workers, and about 10% of its corporate staff. And what's CEO Andy Jassy has really talked about this as a push to cut bureaucracy and flatten layers and eliminate some underperforming businesses. They shut down the remaining Amazon Fresh and Go physical stores, and they also shut down. They're abandoning that Amazon One biometric system. I'd be curious if any of our listeners have tried that. I never did it, but I was curious about folks who are doing that. But the layoffs they span AWS, Alexa, Prime Video, their devices, ads, and Kindle and supply chain teams. And basically, what leadership says, hey, we overhired during COVID. These AI tools are getting incredibly good. We don't need as many employees, and automation is replacing everything from admin work to even more complex engineering tasks. So I think this is just getting fit, as a lot of these tech companies and these hyperscalers have said. So my two things stood out to me in this piece. One is this is how companies are trying to display discipline in the age of AI. Like, in order for them to demonstrate to their shareholders that they're being good stewards of their dollars with all the AI investment, they got to reduce operating costs and they got to show they're getting more efficiency there. But I think what this also does, and this is the point where I'm kind of curious to get your perspective on specifically, which is these companies were previously bastions, like more bastions of security. You got a job at a big tech company, you were probably you were good. You had to work hard, but like if you did, your job was safe. Now, regardless you've been there 10, 20 years, high performing or not, you don't have the same job security. And so what I'm wondering is does this create a bit more of an equilibrium between large conglomerates, these hyperscalers, the Max Evans, and then smaller startups for talent? The risk profile is about the same. Yeah, you may not have the same total comp at a startup, but you actually be able to last there longer than some of these corporate jobs, or maybe it just kind of changes the nature and dynamic of how people think about these opportunities. So curious if you have any thoughts on that specific piece or the layoffs generally.
Yeah, I mean, keeping your job is the new promotion, right? Like you just kind of stick to your lane and you just hope you can continue versus the old days of like, hey, promotion, raise, and move up, get bigger team, get bigger roles. Now you're just kind of like holding on for life a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it is way more interesting now to go into a startup as more risky. You don't hear of people saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna go start at Google," or "I'm gonna go start at some big five tech company," because of that. Like, it's just not as enticing because you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, they're just gonna lay me off. They don't care. I'm just a number."
Hmm.
And I'd rather go start something new. You hear that more, or at least you do fractional and you try to get, maybe a contract here or there. So I think it's 100% right. It's like equalizing the workforce a little bit. But, for a while now, post COVID, the power's really been in the employer's hands in terms of
Yes.
where we are, right? There was a shift 10 years ago where all the power is in the employee because everyone was trying to keep them, and you're getting all these more benefits and packages and pay and equity and it's all this competition. Companies are trying to one up to get the best employees, and now the best employees are fighting for their lives to stay at their jobs. So it is tough. It's tough out here, and I don't know how it pans out, in the next there's going to be some sort of offset of equilibrium where companies go too far, let too many people go, and then you got to bring them back. And then, this is where we are today. We're in the middle of figuring
Yeah.
it out, which is a little rough. Like it's,
I think so. I mean, we've talked about it really since the beginning of the pod
yeah,
around um, changes in the workforce. How quickly AI is moving, and particularly young people trying to come in and trying to figure out how should I be navigating all this.
yes,
What
absolutely.
what makes sense to do, and what roles, uh, and what roles and what industry to go into. I think either of us would probably be lying if we said we had the full playbook. Like, this is exactly what you should do. But I think that ultimately you have to be flexible and bring more of an entrepreneurial spirit to this entire process, because again, I think you could rely on performance before, of like, if I doing a relatively good job and I'm a strong performer, I have opportunities, but that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. So I think you got to figure out, okay, well, if this were to happen, what's the fallback? Sometimes fractional work, contracting. Am I, doing a little side, side business, side small business? Am I getting a laundromat or something like that? It sounds somewhat like wild, kind of talking in these terms relative to the space that we've been in, but I think this is the reality of the situation that we're in.
I mean, I'll give you an example of learning these tools. Just what we do, I downloaded Claude Work. I downloaded a Descript. I downloaded a few things to see if we can optimize uploading and working on these, just our podcasts. And I'll put up the display like this is Descript, this is ChatGPT. Here's the difference. I iterated. Here's the prompt. Like I'll show I'll put it right on the screen here. You can see the variance in performance of these things, and it's not easy. Like you need to understand how to use these tools, and
Yeah.
all of them are unique in the way they display. And if you watched our last podcast, that full edit was done with the script, and then I'll link that here. You can kind of take a look at that versus this one, and we'll continue to play with that. But you're going to have to do your research and understand how to use these tools because I don't think they're going to completely take over your job. You're just going to need to be very efficient in using them, and if you're not, it's going to show, right? Because the
Right.
the
And the efficiency. Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
the
Yeah.
hallucination is gonna be real. Like, it's not we're not there yet. People talk about, "Oh, yeah, these things can do everything." No, they can't. Look, I got proof. I'm just showing you right here. This is Claude trying to do our podcast thumbnails, like, I'm showing it to you right now. This is what it would look like. If I just said, "Hey, you go do it. This is what it looks like." And then it's, like, prompting, to the living end to try to get it optimized. You could just do it. You can just make it yourself if you know how. So, we're not there, and I think it's going to be a while. It's not as quick as next year everyone's fired and we're all going to be have one simple prompt and everything's done. It's just not going to happen. Like this is going to require a lot of work, and a lot of know-how from people to input these things. So I'm less worried about all of a sudden every job is gone. I know that's the concern, but these tools aren't. They're not built in a way that is user friendly for every single person with just a simple prompt.
Yeah. You know that meme where it's like the guy, he's sitting in the gaming chair and then it's him like leaned in?
Right.
I think that's the position now. That's kind of where you have to be in this moment. is I agree with you that it's not like everything will change super abruptly, but it is changing. And super abrupt, it's like I still think substantial things can change within like a year or two, and that you know what I mean. So maybe not necessarily in months. There may be new technology, but not everything transforming in a year. But in 2 years, yes. So I would just say stay leaned in.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about that the car piece. Automatic cyber taxi comes out, it's 25 grand, whatever it is. You know, it's gonna take a while for lots of people to opt in and actually buy that and start operating that. It's not like one day, no more Ubers, everyone's doing it. It's gonna take a while. Like people are gonna need to accept it, and it's gonna go up and down about these things are great, these things are horrible, this is, and then we're gonna land somewhere in the middle, and people slowly adapt, and it just takes a minute. Like we're
Yeah,
not gonna overnight all the cars are gone and you're gonna need insurance. It's gonna take it's much longer than we think, right? Like I have these like visions of like overnight everything is gonna be different, but it's just it's not reasonable to think that way. I think when you really think about how all of these technologies take over, it takes a while. People are slow to adapt to like these incredible technologies. So, buckle up because we'll probably get a lot of signs of what's coming, and then it'll take a minute for everyone to catch up to it. But I do believe these are incredible tools. It's just going to take a while.
fair enough. Use it as a co-pilot. Start to try to learn it, and that way you can kind of stand out in your
In your
roles
daily
and
life. Yeah,
in your
like
daily
this. I
life.
mean,
Yeah.
this like the Claude thumbnail that I put up here, exact same script as the one for that is unusable. Like I literally could not, I couldn't post it. And then I'm like iterating on it, and it's just like, dude, what am I doing? Like this doesn't work.
You
Like
might as
I
well
don't
just do
want
it
to.
yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to spend hours trying to get my like prompting perfect for Claude when it works perfectly fine on ChatGPT. So anyway, I feel like this will be interesting, but it did organize my desktop. That was nice. I don't know if that was worth.
Deleted a lot of scripts and
Yeah, I'll show that too if you want to take a look. This is how it organized everything in my desktop and put everything into an external drive and clean things up. That's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. That would have taken me a long time. I gave it one prompt, see the prompt here. I'll put screenshots on here and did it. That is very neat. That would have absolutely taken a long time to organize. And I'm terrible at that, and especially like after you've used your computer a while and then going back and be like, you know what? I now use my computer for all these different ways. Organize it as such.
Mhm.
It does a great job of that.
Yeah.
I will give it credit for
I'll have
that.
to yeah, excited to kind of see that when you throw it up in the session.
Otherwise, yeah, we'll see. And the last one is OpenAI and its IPO. You always hear. I came from a time where every company was trying to IPO, but like it sounds like OpenAI really has a plan here. And end of the year, early next year, is that what it is?
Yeah. So OpenAI is racing to the public markets before the money runs out. And according to reports from the Wall Street Journal, OpenAI is laying the groundwork for an IPO as early as Q4 and trying to go public before Anthropic specifically. So the company is valued about $500 billion and is trying to raise an additional $100 billion now, more now in private funding ahead of the public debut. So Anthropic is also raising now for Claude, targeting about 20 billion. So you can see kind of the gap there and the amount of funding that they raise. And Amazon and SoftBank are looking to put an additional like 50 billion into OpenAI, uh, 50 and 30 billion respectively. So for this IPO push, right, it's kind of like one of two things, at least in my mind. On the one hand, you have the fact that they just need access to the money, right? So they have the new developer ecosystem where people are going to be able to launch apps. They're going to be able to kind of monetize that and through ads. They have kind of new enterprise focus in terms of getting more embedded there. And then they have this access to private funding, but they have trillions of dollars of infrastructure commitments. So the only way that they can really, access like truly access all the capital markets is by going public. So I think it's not just kind of one piece is not just them doing the IPO to just do an IPO and stay ahead of the headlines. It's because they actually need the cash. But I think that the other reason is because if you look at ChatGPT versus Claude versus Grok versus Gemini, ChatGPT is like the number 4 right now in terms of model quality. But I think that actually matters less right now because the models will likely converge, at least for the average day to day person. They're probably going to converge more over time. So it's more about them continuing to own the verb of, I'm going to ChatGPT this or that, kind of like what Google was, and really just cement themselves as a key player. In order to do that, they gotta own the narrative and they gotta IPO first. So I think that's kind of the other reason. But they're sucking a lot of dollars out, man. I mean, it's kind of incredible the amount of money that they've been able to raise and continue to raise.
I mean, they are the Xerox of this genre, right? Like everyone talks
Ooh,
about.
that could be kind of harsh.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like vernacular, people
Yeah.
think ChatGPT.
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna,
mean in terms of vernacular, not what
yeah,
happened to Xerox? Okay.
not actually what happened to Xerox, but like I still think when you think Xerox, I'm going to make a copy. It may not even be a Xerox machine. People say chat. I'm going to Chat GPT, and they're actually just using Google. Like I've
Yeah.
seen it. Like people are like, oh, I'm going to Chat GPT, and I look, and I'm like, you're using Gemini. But that's just like the term that people associate with it, which I think is really fascinating. Like, again, it is open AI, but Chat GPT as a verb is a real thing, which I think is great.
Yeah. I think that it's fat. Like, obviously, the product has to be really strong. We talk about this all the time. Marketing is really only gasoline on the fire, product market fit. And I think that for a huge audience, 800 million weekly active users, they have a great product. But the marketing and the distribution piece creates a moat as well, especially as the models converge. So you just want to have the name that's out there and in everybody's mouths as they're thinking about it, right? When they're doing the searches or when they're using tools, when they're first dipping their toes into it, you're that player, especially because they decided to go more of the route on the consumer side than Anthropic, more on the enterprise side. So I think it's smart of them to kind of get out to try to IPO first.
Name out there.
Yeah, remains to be seen if they'll be able to match all that like $1 trillion in infrastructure commitments, but I think this is the path
I
to
mean,
do it.
to me, it's still the what we originally talked about in that they don't have the ecosystem that Apple and Google have. So it's really they have an uphill battle, right? They've done a great job getting ChatGPT out there in their name, but ultimately, the average person still needs to go download the app
Mhm.
and then and then open it up and start using it when they need it instead of just opening up their phone and being there, or integrating with Siri or doing all the things that, by nature default requires, right? Like
Yeah,
being the default voice assistant for all the TVs and devices out there is probably going to be the biggest easy win for that. But again, that's hard.
yeah. Well, I think that's why I don't necessarily see them replacing kind of like an iPhone right off the bat or anything like that, but I think it is interesting to think about their device strategy. And I think they have a device that's supposed to be launching in 2027 and what that actually looks like. Because if people are using that in combination with a phone, but they're spending less time on the screen, they're spending more time just kind of operating with whatever kind of small companion device they have, if it's a pen or whatever else, then the core distribution hardware becomes more of that device with like the phone as an ancillary thing as opposed to the other way around. And I think that's where it becomes more of an existential threat for Apple. But I do agree that like right now, obviously, distribution advantage is heavily in favor of Apple and Google.
What do you think is going to happen to our brains as we use this? Because I think about like MapQuest came out, we stopped learning directions. The phones came out, we stopped remembering phone numbers. Yeah, I don't. Navigation came out, we don't need to know how directions in cars. There's all kinds of like what happens to our brains when and how do we adjust, right? Is it the pen? Is it like because I do catch myself thinking my brain doesn't work as well. I mean, that could be just me getting old, but it's like I need to take better notes now
Yeah.
because like my short-term memory is not as good from the TikTokification of everything that I'm like
Yeah.
constantly going back to like real like notepad notes, which I
Hmm.
think is interesting. And maybe that's just me, but I've heard it from a multitude of people that are
Yeah.
like even going back and taking notes more because I just can't, my brain can't remember the things as well as it used to. And I think a lot of that is because of the way we consume content and data and like how
Yeah.
we operate. You're going up, you come out of a meeting, you get on your phone, you're doing the thing, and then next thing you know, it's like the news cycle really takes over. Uh,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I found myself falling to that as well. I try to if I'm taking notes or I'm taking a pass at some written content, I try to like write it myself first, even though that's less efficient, just to kind of making sure that I can still formulate the
Yeah.
ideas on my own, and then I can have AI clean up some stuff. And I'm trying to read more books, right? I'm trying to like do things that are more analog to fight against that. But yeah, I think that's going to be a real challenge, man. I don't know if you've seen the Wall-E movie, but you got everybody like kind of floating around in those little, lawn
Bit
chair looking
I
things that don't
I can
move around.
I
Like,
see it and I feel it. Like,
yeah,
the way I think and the way I used to think, "Ah, my superpower is, like, the memory. I know where things are and I can remember." I can't do that anymore because of, like, there's so much out there. It
yeah,
is
a lot of
hard.
inputs.
It is hard, yeah, because you're looking at just scrolling through TikTok, you get off, you looked at it for 30 minutes, you're like, "What did I just watch? I don't remember any of it now." And
Yeah.
that's scary. That's really scary, right? Like, it's not very actionable content that you're watching. It's like dopamine hits, and
Hmm.
you think like informational, but you don't consume any of it anymore, like, in terms of into your brain, into your long-term memory. It's just like
Yeah. I
mush,
think you have
right?
to just be more proactive about limiting that behavior in the same way as you're like, oh, I'm not just going to watch TV all day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or like, I'm going to play video games. I'm not going to play them all. I think it's that same type of
Even
thinking
as
around the
I look
behavior.
back on it and, like, when we used to veg out and watch TV, I'd remember Simpsons and Seinfeld episodes and lines, and
Hmm.
my attention was better.
Yeah.
This, I couldn't tell you. Maybe there's a little bit of music and cues and, stuff from TikTok, but, like, it is harder. I shouldn't say concerned, I just think there are gonna be tools that need to be built to help us in this new era because we're definitely brain rot is real. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it. Yeah, I think
More to
there's
come.
a fine balance.
There
I
is a
think,
fine balance.
yeah.
No. Alright, anything else?
Hey, man, we're just out here trying to learn ourselves and help the
Yeah,
people if we can. But
yeah,
make
like and
sure you
subscribe, man. You know what to do.
absolutely.
Hit these buttons, it helps us, takes 2 seconds, like and subscribe below, and we'll keep you updated.
Yes, sir.
Alright, Justin,
Until
we'll
next
talk
week.